Hello, does it work? Yes, it works. Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to this EPP Group press conference on the controversial nature restoration law. You are all very well aware that the Environment Committee is going to vote on this law next Thursday, on 15th of June. And you also know that the EPP Group withdrew from the negotiations with other political groups. We urge the Commission Vice President Frans Timmermans to withdraw the law. To tell you a bit more about our position, I have here with me three EPP Group speakers. Esther de Lange, the Vice Chairwoman responsible for environment, Christine Schneider, the Chief Negotiator on Nature Restoration, and Frans, the EPP Group responsible in the Agriculture Committee on Nature Restoration. So I give the floor immediately to Esther to make a brief, no longer than 2.5 minutes, introduction statement.
That was a very clear brief, Marta. Thank you very much. What I wanted to say centers around a quote that isn't mine, but I think really sums up the EPP position on this nature restoration law very well. And that is a good intention with a bad approach often leads to a poor result. This is not about not respecting our international commitments on biodiversity as laid down in the Agreement of Montreal. I think Christina will speak about that. We stick to those commitments, but we as an EPP, we have serious structural concerns about the approach in this new law, which is why we believe indeed, Marta, that it should go back to the drawing board. For example, the Commission never looked into the reasons why member states are failing to reach the Nature 2000 objectives. They conclude that they are not and put a new level of legislation on top with a different approach, focusing on ecosystems rather than habitats and species as Nature 2000 does, thus increasing the burden of European companies that have to comply with two different types of legislation. Secondly, the impact assessment. Yes, it is there, and yes, it has a lot of pages. However, it is not answering the real questions that you would expect to have in an impact assessment. The impact on food production, for example. Commission states that taking 10% of agricultural productive land out of production will only lead to a decrease in production itself by 2%. This is data that is severely questioned from several sides. The additional surface that is required to be under protective status is also again questioned by member states. The cost of living, the impact on the cost of living and inflation is also unclear. So for us as members of the European Parliament, it feels like they're asking us to sign a blank check, even without having some kind of an emergency break. If the rosy figures of the Commission turn out to be false, there's no break to pull to say we now actually take some time to look into this before we continue. Mind you, in the Fit for 55 package, we did have such emergency breaks all over the place, so it's not like it's without precedence. Then also it is an invitation for court cases. Commission is now saying, well, definitions are still rather vague, member states can still approach this one way or the other. I can tell you one thing, as long as you put 70 years ago into your proposal, which the Commission did when it comes to a restoration target, a judge that sees that number will uphold that figure with a result, with an impact on planning permissions not being granted, etc. I'm finishing up, Marta. For us, it's also unclear how nature restoration is linked to other pieces of EU legislation. The myth that if we don't have the nature restoration law, nothing will be done on nature restoration is absolutely false. Look at page 222 of the impact assessment of the Commission itself. There's lines and lines and lines of legislation that already foresee rules for companies, for farmers, on nature legislation that are already existing. Furthermore, we fear that the legislation might endanger EU geostrategic goals. We're currently working on strategic industries in the net zero industry Act. It is on critical raw materials, and currently the Environment Committee seems to be going in a direction where they say, okay, but we don't want these critical raw materials to be mined in protected zones, as a result of which, we might be empty-handed when it comes to these very important strategic objectives of the Union. I finally want to zoom in on farmers very shortly, because I think Anne will do as well. We ask a lot from our farming industry, and they want to contribute, and they want to innovate. They will also want to look ahead into the future. This piece of legislation asks them to keep what was, or restore what was once there. I think we believe it was a mistake of the Commission not to make this proposal of the nature restoration law, which is about the past, together with proposals that look towards the future. So, for example, the new genome techniques, the use of Renewer, etc. These are proposals that the Greens in this House have already said they will block. So we might be in a situation where the EPP is now accused of blocking one piece of legislation, which is about looking backwards. The whole innovative part that our farmers also need might be blocked then by the Greens. Would have been smarter to put them both on the table, as the Commission did in case of the Fit for 55 package. So, to sum up, I think it's not that difficult. What we would foresee is that the responsible commissioner and also the responsible vice president takes this proposal back, does a real impact assessment, addresses our concerns, including for emergency breaks, and also puts forward, if he comes with a new proposal, does it together with forward-looking innovative proposals dealing, for example, with new genome techniques. But the Commission seems to prefer to focus for the moment on lobbying, and we might say a couple of words on that, but I think that's for later. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Esther, that you underlined the important things. I will explain why the EPP left the negotiation table last week in the ENVI committee. And there are two levels. The one is the technical level, something Esther underlines, and the other is the political level. We think that, or we share the opinion of a good nature restoration law, but the proposal of the Commission is not make very good, it's make bad. And it has good intention, but it's in a bad design, because the proposal, and as I said, it is not in the future, it's not a future-based approach, it look in the past. That's the first thing. The second thing, it does not fulfill the targets of Montreal, because Montreal said that 30% of the degraded areas in the world must be restored. And the Commission wants that 30% of the whole area of the European Union to restore. That's the difference. And the question, where are the degraded areas in the European Union? The Commission always said to us, we don't know it, we have no data. And that's a reason the Commission until now didn't give us the answers on our question, and also didn't deliver the data they promised. We have no solid impact assessment. We have no solid impact assessment on the food security, also on the impact of renewable energies, and also on critical raw materials. And we have no answers how we will secure food security. The only answer the impact assessment gives, and the Commission, is we need to save our bees and we need to save our insects. That's right. We also support this, but only to have bees and insects is not enough. We also need our farmers, and our farmers need the land to produce our foodstuff. And if we will do the impact of the Commission, we will lose areas out of production. That are some points about the technical level, but I will say something about the political level. And I never had such a situation in over 20 years politics. When the Commission, in persona Vice President Timmermans and his Commissioner Sinkevičius, realized that they will have maybe no majority in the committees, they let some members come in their office and then they threatened them. And a lot of members of the European Parliament, not only of my political group, said, with this, Vice President Timmermans crosses a red line. And I think, yes, he crosses a red line with this behavior, because the Commission job is to put everything together, but not to threaten MEPs of the Parliament. And yesterday we reached, I think, a new step, a new level from red lines Vice President Timmermans cross. You know, the platform Business and Biodiversity platform. It's a platform who is organized by the European Commission, by the DG ENVI, and it's funded by the Commission. And if you go on this platform, you find a roadmap for campaign different MEPs of the Parliament, of the ENVI committee, and what arguments and what you should do that the members say yes to the nature restoration law. When you go on the platform, you will see a list of members of the European Parliament with their email address and their social media account. And this is not the job of a commission. And there, Vice President Timmermans goes the next time over a red line, and we cannot accept this as a democratical party. We cannot accept this as a member of the Parliament, because we are voted in our constituency to make politics here on the European level.
Thank you, Anne.
Yes, thank you. I'm very happy to be here today and to have this discussion with you and with the colleagues of the ENVI committee. It's not easy because, of course, we are very committed for the biodiversity, for the climate change to fight against, and we share the objectives of the Green Deals, but sometimes it is our responsibility to say no to a proposal when the proposal is bad and when the proposal is impossible to implement. And this is the case with the proposal of the nature restoration. I think it will directly affect the European production and the food cost for all our citizens. With this text, the philosophy of the Commission is clear, and is to say that to save the planet, the solution is to produce less. And I think this is a mistake. First, it is against the first idea of the Green Deal, which is to leave no one behind, and then it's also against food security and autonomous strategy. I think we should, to solve the problem of the planet, we should produce better. We need to invest in innovation, in new technologies, and so on, but not with this proposal. So I would like, as Agri rapporteur for the opinion on this text, I would give you some examples of no sense. First, the Commission proposals aim to have by 2030 10% of the Union's agriculture areas covered by high diversity landscape features. We now just implementing the cap, and in the cap we have 4%. There are also high targets in the nature restoration law to re-erect drained peatlands, which were used for agriculture purpose. The targets are not realistic and will oblige the farmers to farm on real, less productive areas, or sometimes to stop their activities. So this will also mean less production for our continent. And these two examples shows and explain how the Commission sees the agriculture sector. On the forestry, I can give another example. The indicators chosen by the Commission are also dangerous in a way such as the standings and lying dead wood. In member states with high fire risk, the provision can be against some national regulation which are already in place to prevent the propagation of forest fires. especially in the south of Europe. So to conclude, the Commission says that the text will not be binding, but it will, because the Member State will have to propose a restoration plan and the Commission will evaluate them. So there are a lot of contradiction, and really to say a last thing, I have also to say that I was very surprised with the attitude of the Commission, especially with the lobbying that Christine described, a lobbying which is coordinated by the DG Envy, and I think this is really problematic. There is a list of members of the Parliament to contact, and you have all the methodology to contact them, to organize a campaign on Twitter and so on. And this is not the role of the Commission. There is a problem of personal data, but there is also a problem of respect of the institutional dialogue.
Thank you. We've heard the members. Just maybe one addition from my side. You, as a reminder, you know that the Fisheries and the Agriculture Committees have already rejected the law proposal. Before I open the floor for questions, 3 more things very shortly. This briefing is not only taking place in person, but it's also taking place online. We have a strong online presence. I therefore already invite the journalists online to raise their hands if they have a question, because the priority goes to the room. Second thing, there is no interpretation, so please ask your questions in clear English. And also please only ask a question if you are a journalist. I imagine there might be lobbyists in the room as well, so please only ask a question if you are a journalist. Let's start. Alice there in the back row.
Thank you, and thank you for the briefing. I just wanted to get your view on the Council's recent compromise amendments on the nature restoration law. It looks like, I mean, if the way this is going, the Council could indeed be in the position to be more ambitious than the Parliament for once.
I can react if you want. In as far as I have been able to study them in detail, because I got them yesterday, in particular the concerns about the other strategic interests of the Union are not addressed. There's no blanket exemption, for example, for NZIA projects, for net zero industry projects. There's no blanket exemption for critical raw materials. That concern that we had remains, and a number of the underlying structural flaws that I mentioned. Of course, this doesn't address the fact that the impact assessment is partially wishful thinking and not answering the questions. So yes, the presidency is working on detail, article by article, but it's not solving the main problems that are more underlying and more structural that we had with this law from the beginning, and that I mentioned in my introduction. I can go in more detail bilaterally if you want. I don't want to take too much time. Okay.
Next question. Go ahead.
Virginie Malang, French newspaper Le Monde. You said some MEPs were threatened by Mr. Timmermans in his office. Can you be more precise? I mean, who were the MEPs and what kind of threatenings did they hear? Hope my English was clear.
Some names you can read also in different newspapers. I can say that Esther and me were also in the office of Vice President Timmermans and Commissar Sinčevičius. And the first question, what we want, if we can support the proposal. And we said we have a problem really with the baseline of the proposal because it was not made very good. And we said it 9 months ago and repeated always. And then he said really clear, there are some legislative proposals who are very important for the EPP, and if we get no support for the nature restoration law, there will come no proposal who is important.
Maybe to take it from there, I mean, I've been in this house now for 16 years. I don't feel easily threatened, but I think the problem here is in particular the issue that we have now with the lobbying through businesses. So members will be contacted by businesses. That might be just a food company or any brand you see in your local supermarket. They contact members of the European Parliament. What these members of the European Parliament won't know is that they have received an information package telling them what they can say, what type of emails they can send, what type of social media statements they can make. And all of this is coordinated through an organization, Business and Biodiversity, where the secretariat is held within DG Envy. So it looks like the European Commission is financing their own lobby, their own support for this proposal, which I think completely oversteps the normal role of a commission. If this is true, this came to our attention yesterday. We take it extremely serious. We're looking into this. If we have more, I'm quite sure through our spokespersons we will get this information to you. But if this is indeed what it looks like, it's very serious, because it would mean that the Commission oversteps its role of an honest broker. It's financing one part of the political discussion. I mean, imagine if the European Commission, DG Industry, was financing, the speaking points to be distributed among the steel industry as to what to say about the proposal on the emission trading system. I mean, those who were critical of the emission trading system would be crying outrage. So we are looking into this very, very seriously, and this, I think, is the more overall worrying point to make. Thank you.
Let's move in the first row. Could you please also say who you're working for?
Yeah. Louise Guillot, I work for Politico. I have a question about the compromise text that the Envy Committee has prepared. So it includes some of the demands that the EPP had made, notably on the 10% landscape feature. So could you tell us a little bit what's your position on this text and whether you're considering supporting some of the amendments, at least on this? Thank you.
Yes, that's right. We as EPP reach a lot in the negotiation, that's clear. But, for example, for the landscape feature, it's not far enough for us, because the 10% and the compromise is not inside. But if you look in the Annex 4 and the Annex 7, you see that, for example, Annex 7 is the structure where the member states have to fulfill to make their national strategy plans to restore nature, and the 10% are also inside. And so it's always inside the text, and that's the problem we have with the structure of the whole legislation, because it's not in every article clear what it means for the other article. But in the Annex 7, you can really see clear that the thinking of the Commission, and it was not rejected in the Annex from the compromises, is to take land out of production, then you can reach it. You can reach the targets of nature restoration, and that's the big difference between Commission, the compromises of the other political group, and that what we think as EPP. We think we can reach it only in hand with forestry, with the landowners, with agriculture, with fishermen, and not against them.
Excellent. Matthijs.
Yeah, Matthijs Schiffers, Het Financiële Dagblad. Some of my questions have already been answered, but I want to come back to this council proposal, especially to the deterioration ban, because it looks like the word significant is added to it, which is a move into the direction. One of the complaints from the Netherlands mainly is regarding this. So this question is mainly addressed to Esther de Lange, and what, to what extent do you see this as a concession that makes a difference for you?
I think this is a very Dutch question. Apologies to the non-Dutch in the room. I know that the legal assessment of the council text is ongoing, but the first indications are that it might still be something that is binding for the result to be achieved. So it's not an effort requirement, but still binding for the final goal. So whether that is enough is doubtful. and I need to have more legal advice. But I'm not only Dutch, so my problem is not only with Article 4. I have serious concerns about virtually all the articles in this legislation. Maybe I can answer one sentence in Dutch. Yeah. De analyse die nog gedaan moet worden is of dit nou een resultaatsverplichting is of dat het een inspanningsverplichting is. En er zijn eerste indicaties dat het nog steeds een resultaatsverplichting zou zijn. En dat zelfs met het woord significant er de facto potentieel weinig verandert in Nederland als het om de vergunningsverlening gaat. Maar daarover zijn dus echt alle analyses nog gaande en krijgen wij bijna per uur inschattingen over hoe dat zit. Dus ik durf me daar nog niet aan te verbinden voor dat artikel 4. Yeah, of dat voldoende is.
The proposal mentions effort-based, I think so.
I know, but even if it mentioned effort-based, and this is what the lawyers are now fighting about, it can in court, in particular in the very legalized situation in the Netherlands, where a judge will err on the side of caution, still be binding in terms of the overall objective. And this is what we need to check. As you know, this is one of the main lines of our minister responsible, so I am assuming she also wants to check and wants to be 100% sure.
And if this is no longer binding, would that make a difference for you?
No, because it's one article out of a whole long list. My main concern will remain that I fear that the geostrategic interest, renewable energy, strategic industries, and then I haven't even touched upon farming, are under threat here. And if I see where the talks on NZIA, for example, are going in the Environment Committee, I'm concerned, and I want guarantees there first.
I suggest we move.
Yeah, sorry, apologies.
Kira from Euractiv.
Yes, Kira Taylor from Euractiv. So some have suggested that this is also a bit of a political move from the EPP, especially with the elections coming up. I was wondering what your response would be for that. And also the European Commission has been very clear that this is the only proposal it will provide. What's your next move if you end up in a stalemate between the two of you? Thank you.
Do we maybe start with Ms. Sander? Would you like to answer this question?
Yes, just to be sure that because my English is just the next step for this text.
Yes.
Okay, but the next step.
And also whether this is a politically motivated.
Okay, oui. Okay, I think this text, the next step, we'll have the vote in the ENVI and then in the plenary. But I have also to say that this text comes in a global context, which is very, very difficult because since months and months now, coming from the Commission and in the point of view of the Agri Committee, we have new proposals of regulation which are very hard for the farmers and which not take into account all the global situation and especially the food security. We can speak about SURE or other text. And with this text, which is very global, which has an impact on many ecosystems and so many consequences and so many incoherences, I think now it was really the good moment to say stop, it's too much now, and we are waiting of positive regulation, of positive proposals coming from the Commission, and these proposals are very important. We can speak, for example, on the new genomic technicals. Yes, this is important, and this proposal or the carbon certification, this proposal would be interesting and positive for the farmers, for the food security, but also for the environment, and this we are waiting for.
Thank you.
Maybe just allow me one sentence, because I've heard this line. It's a very easy line, right? Okay, next year there are elections, so this must be linked to the elections. If I wanted to be a populist and score easy points in the elections in the Netherlands, I would have gone full frontal against the Green Deal. I didn't. I delivered the Green Deal. as key coordinator for the EPP. And therefore, I think the whole logic about this is now about the elections. I've been in this House for 16 years. I've never put forward an amendment that said, until now, rejects the Commission proposal. I don't do this lightly. I'm somebody who normally builds compromises and doesn't stand offside. I'm on the pitch normally. But here there were so many structural concerns that we felt we had to do this. And you could tell once we did, there were sounds from the Council, from heads of government saying, indeed, we might have to discuss this a bit longer. So I would say quality over speed.
We did run out of time, but because nobody else is coming in the room, I see many questions that we extend this for 5 more minutes, if everybody is fine.
Or 10 or 15 or...
Excellent. So let's go to the yes.
John Ainger, Bloomberg News. Can you just say whether you think you've got the numbers to reject this in the Environment Committee next week? And also, obviously, the Commission is due to propose something on food and biodiversity, a package, in July. Do you want them to withhold that one as well for the time being? Thank you.
I'd be actually more constructive than that. I mean, as for the vote next week, I think it would be 50-50. Which obviously is making the Commission very, very uncomfortable. Otherwise, they wouldn't be, pushing all these human resources and maybe even financial ones. We're looking into this lobbying that we described. To answer your second question on the package of the 5th of July, which presumably also includes the new genome techniques that Anne mentioned. They are important for forward-looking, innovative farmers. I would suggest the Commission takes this proposal back. Puts it out in a more realistic fashion. They have input from Council, they have input now from Parliament and from public discussions. Clean up this act and do a more proper impact assessment. As far as I'm concerned, they can bring something new out on the 5th, together with the new genome techniques. And then we can discuss what do we need to protect what was once there, or to restore what was once there, but how do we at the same time also allow our farmers to be forward-looking and to use new techniques? Because yes, climate is changing. You can't fix everything by going back 70 years like the Commission wants. You might also need new techniques to be able to grow crops in drier soil or in more salty soil in case of land near the sea. So I'd be more constructive. We'd be open to that.
And I want to underline something also about the last question. It's not new that the EPP has concern with this proposal. We said it since the beginning, but we were very open to negotiate. We had our own ideas. But since now the Commission doesn't deliver, they gave us no answer on our question, and they give us not the data materials to make a solid baseline for this proposal. And that's the reason now we said, okay, we cannot go for a round, so it's not new. We repeat it always in the same way. What's important for the EPP? What are the important things we should look in the impact assessment? Where we need data that we can explain in our constituency, in our member states, what this legislative proposal will make in the future. And we must learn out of our faults in the past. The Commission said to us when we asked them, what are the faults of Natura 2000? And the Commission said, when in the Parliament in the 90s, they decided the nature restoration, the Natura 2000 law. There was clear that the targets of Natura 2000 is not fulfillable in the member states. And we don't want to repeat the same fault.
Okay, let's take last 2 questions, if there are, in the back row.
I take it that's me. Robert Hodgson from ENDS Europe. I'd like to ask a question of Ms. Schneider, please. You mentioned that the proposal doesn't even meet the requirements of the Montreal Agreement, which is specifically to make sure that 30% of degraded habitats are at least under restoration by 2030.
It goes beyond.
If you reject the Commission's proposal on the grounds that it doesn't meet this requirement, what would you suggest we propose instead?
sorry, then it was not so clear what I said. In Montreal, we decided that 30% of the degraded area. It will be more easier for me to do it in German, but I will try in English. Of the degraded area should be restored, yes. And the Commission proposal said that 30% of the whole area of the European Union should be restored, because at the moment it's not possible, and we know the reasons why the Commission is not able to give us the data where are the restored areas in the European Union and what we should do.
Could I have a quick follow-up question, please? The Commission's proposal deals with ecosystems individually, and there are different restoration targets for different ecosystems. My understanding is it's not a global target of restoring 30% of EU land. And the
no, but it's 30% of each at EU level of the ecosystems that are still to be determined. But of those ecosystems that need to be protected, 30% of those, whereas in the Montreal Agreement, the way I understand it also from those of us who were there, is that they talk about 30% of the most, seriously degraded, so of the degraded territory. And the analysis is, and the Commission admitted, that basically the Commission proposal goes beyond what is needed to implement the obligations that the EU entered into in Montreal. They even admitted that once the EPP started saying, okay, guys, this is way beyond what we think would actually work on the ground in Europe. They admitted that their proposal does more than what we would oblige to do on the basis of Montreal, and that they were willing to change that. Now, until now, we only have that orally in a meeting where 5 people were present. I don't see it reflected, Alice, I'm back with you, in the latest presidency text. But for us, this is something we need to discuss. Are we going to sign up to something that goes beyond what we need to do on the basis of Montreal? And I don't think it's wise.
Last question, please go ahead. Yes.
Thank you, Ardy Stemerding, NOS. Getting back on the threat, it's quite an accusation, and for me it's still unclear what exactly was the threat. So could you please tell me what happened?
I'm since 4 years here in the Parliament, and I think the job of the Commission is to present a proposal, and then we have to negotiate in the Parliament. And if the Parliament says there are things who are not good, it's not the job of the Commission to bring some members in their office and say what they have to do. And if you look now on this media package and how the Commission, the DG ENVI, goes through with members of the Parliament, I think it's really clear. And it's not the job of the Commission to look for majority in the Parliament. They should convince with arguments, and they should bring together Council and Parliament, but not to say some members of the European Parliament what they should do in the committee and in the plenary session.
Just to complete, I would say that we have been contacted by some members of this platform, which have been contacted by the Commission and by this platform, and there are it's very difficult for them because they have really pressure, the pressure coming from the Commission, and so they are between the Parliament and the Commission, and the Commission make pressure on some actors, and this is not acceptable.
Maybe let me take you to the meeting of the Environment Committee, because that was public, because otherwise we stay in a discussion about who said what to whom and who felt intimidated by what. So let me take you to the meeting of the Environment Committee, where of course the Executive Vice President was very keen to salvage what was on the table, which I can understand. That's his full right. But then to call upon the EPP to rejoin the coalition of constructive parties that is in favor of the rule of law. goes a bit far, right? Insinuating that if you don't support the proposal on the nature restoration law, you're against the rule of law. I mean, you can look up this quote. You can look up this quote, and this is what he said. So I said I didn't feel threatened by a discussion that I had with the Commission. Might be because I'm in this House for 16 years. You don't threaten me very, very easily. But I do think that the methods that are being used, the lobbying organized from within the European Commission, saying that the EPP needs to rejoin the constructive coalition that is in favor of the rule of law. Let me say, I think that intervention made things worse rather than better. What I wanted to do, and let me wrap up there because you're looking at the time. What I wanted to do here is to set very, very clear that for the EPP, this is not about playing politics towards 2024. The key issues for the EPP have been clear from the beginning. We need to have reassurance that what we're trying to do in our strategic industrial policy can continue to be done, even with this piece of legislation, and we don't have this guarantee at the moment. There are several other issues that I addressed in my intervention. But most importantly, if the Commission is wise and withdraws this and comes back with a package like it did on Fit for 55, why did Fit for 55 work? Because they put forward something on ETS, on CBAM, and on the Social Climate Fund. And there was something to like for everyone, there was something to hate for everyone. And because they made these three proposals and negotiated them hand in hand, we could take steps forward. At the moment, half of the package, in our view, is missing, and serious concerns have not been addressed. But we are not about being no all the time. If the Commission can come up with an impact assessment that answers our questions, with a proposal that is cleaned up, together with the new breeding techniques, we shall then be on the table again.
And with that, I'm afraid we will have to draw a line somewhere. I thank you for being here. I invite you to reach out to us bilaterally if some questions remained unanswered. The members will also be still around here if you need more answers. Thank you.
Very